Ceasefire by Rose Mackey.
Bitter pill. Rowen woke the next morning to a pounding headache and a lighter heart. Fila and Zira had left in the early hours, after extracting a promise that she'd actually rest today instead of diving back into work. The remains of their impromptu therapy session littered her small living space, empty wine bottles, takeout containers, and the lingering warmth. She stretched, cataloguing the lingering aches and the ways her body was healing. The healers had done their work well, only the faintest twinges remained. But her head, that was entirely her own fault. She should have known better than to match Zira drink for drink. Her HUD chimed with an incoming message. Without looking, she knew who it would be. Petra's concern practically radiated through the brief message. "How are you feeling this morning?" She smiled despite her headache, typing back, "Better, though I may have overdone it with Fila and Zira last night." Another chime. "May I come check on you?" Her heart gave a ridiculous little flutter. Doors open. She had barely finished making coffee when the door alert sounded. Petre entered, carrying a small package that emanated a mouth-watering scent. "I brought breakfast," he said, crossing to her kitchen. She moved toward him, drawn by the twin lures of food and his presence. "You're spoiling me." He set the package down and turned to her, eyes conducting a clinical assessment. "You look better. More colour in your cheeks." His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the touch lingering. "But you didn't sleep well." "I slept fine," she protested. "It's just a wine headache." His eyebrow arched. "Wine with Fila and Zira?" She leaned into his touch. "They wanted to check on me. I may have told them about us." At his alarmed expression, she quickly added, "Not everything. Just that there's something between us that we need to keep private for now." "They're empaths, Petre. They would have figured it out anyway." To her surprise, he relaxed. "I trust them. And you need people you can talk to." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I don't like the thought of you carrying this burden alone." She smiled, then remembered what else she'd done last night. "I also accepted Varian's invitation." Petre went still, his hand dropping away. "What?" "For tonight," she clarified, stepping back to give him space. "He's taking me to Rocks." "Tonight?" His voice had dropped an octave. "That's very soon." She blinked, suddenly uncertain. "I thought that was the plan, to throw Bylelle off the scent." "It was," he agreed, though his jaw had tightened. "I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly." "Doesn't it need to be quick?" she countered. "You said everyone noticed how you reacted when I was hurt. The sooner we establish that there's nothing between us, the better, right?" He paced the small space, muscles tense beneath his uniform. "Logically, yes. But nothing about this feels logical." He turned to face her, his expression nakedly possessive. "The thought of you with him, even for show." She crossed to him, placing her hands on his chest. "Hey, remember what I said yesterday? It's you I'm coming home to." His hands settled at her waist, drawing her closer. "Promise?" "I promise." She rose on tiptoes to brush her lips against his. "I'll come straight to your quarters afterward." The kiss shifted, deepened, as his control frayed. He backed her against the kitchen counter, lifting her to sit on its edge as his mouth claimed hers with fierce intent. Her legs parted instinctively, allowing him to press closer, his hands sliding beneath her sleep shirt to map the warm skin of her back. "Mine," he murmured against her throat, the word more plea than command. "Yours," she agreed, gasping as his teeth found her pulse point. "Only yours." His hands tightened on her hips, not quite bruising but edging toward it. "Say it again." "I'm yours, Petre." Her fingers tangled in his hair, tugging him back to meet her gaze. "And after this ridiculous date, I'll come to you. I promise." Something within him seemed to settle at her words. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. their breath mingling in the scant space between them. "I'm going to hold you to that," he said, voice rough. "I'm counting on it." She smiled, tracing his lower lip with her thumb. "Now, about that breakfast you brought." He laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "So practical." "Healing takes energy," she reminded him, stealing one more kiss before gently pushing him back. "And if I'm going out tonight, I need to conserve my strength." His expression darkened briefly at the reminder, but he nodded, helping her down from the counter with careful hands. As they settled to eat, his leg pressed against hers beneath the small table, maintaining contact as if reassuring himself of her presence. "What time will you be at the restaurant?" he said finally, voice carefully neutral. 1800. She studied him over her coffee. "Why? Planning to spy on us?" His smile was slightly feral. "Would that bother you?" "Not at all." She grinned. "Though you might want to wear something less distinctive than that uniform. You're pretty recognizable, you know." "I'll keep that in mind." He hesitated, then added more seriously, "Be careful with him, Rowen. There's something not right about Varian. The way he follows Bylelle ... "I know," she assured him. "Believe me, I'll be on guard, and we'll be in public the whole time." He nodded, though the tension hadn't fully left his shoulders. The restaurant's in the main hub, so there'll be plenty of people around. "And afterward?" "I'll come straight to you," she promised again. "Though I may need to make it look like I'm going home first in case he tries to walk me back." Petre nodded in understanding. She smiled. "See? We can make this work." He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips, biting her fingertips gently. "Just remember who you belong to." The possessive declaration should have offended her independent nature. Instead, it sent a delicious shiver down her spine. "As if I could forget." His eyes darkened at her tone, and she knew that if not for her healing injuries and his duty shift, breakfast would have been quickly abandoned for more urgent appetites. The knowledge was as thrilling as any touch. "Tonight?" he promised, the word heavy with anticipation. "After your engagement." "Tonight," she agreed. "Try not to glare too much if you see us, His reluctant laugh was the sweetest sound she'd heard all morning. "I make no promises about that." 10 hours later, she ran her hands through her hair and examined her reflection a final time. She would never be a model, but even she had to admit she'd polished up well. You'd never know that she nearly died a few days ago, or that this entire evening was an elaborate ruse. The navy dress swirled in layers of delicate silk around her calves, the deep neckline plunging, but not scandalous. The short sleeves took it back into casual territory, kept it from being overdressed. "For him, I'm doing this for him," she reminded herself, steeling her resolve. One dinner with Varian was a small price to pay if it kept Bylelle's attention diverted. A quick check of the time showed that she had less than 15 minutes. Rowen hurried out the door, mentally reviewing her role for the evening. Interested but not over-eager, friendly but with appropriate boundaries. She could do this. When she arrived, the host directed her to a table near the window, where Varian was already waiting. His pilot's uniform had been exchanged for civilian clothes that highlighted his tall, athletic build. Like some of his Verit brothers, he also had subtle pale striations on his skin, like the slightest hint of stripes. He stood as she approached, offering the smile that had charmed half the colony. She did a quick scan around the room, heart secretly hoping to glimpse silver hair and ice-blue eyes somewhere in the shadows. Nothing. She tried and failed to convince herself that it was a good thing. The last thing they needed was Petre losing his composure again if Varian touched her. "I was starting to worry you'd changed your mind," he said as she sat down. "I suppose the genius engineer that saved the biodomes is in pretty hot demand right now." "Oh, I suppose everyone's talking about it." Rowen cleared her throat, a remembered echo of panic shivering through her. It wasn't that big of a deal. I heard you saved the day. Oh. She took a sip of water, reminding herself to seem interested in his response, even as her empathic senses remained vigilant for any hint of Bylelle's presence. Varian smiled gallantly. I'm just glad you're okay. Shall we order some food? Rowen nodded and smiled, picking up the menu. What's good here? Varian smiled broadly. Everything. Shall I order for us? Something to share? Rowen kept a bright smile plastered on her face. She really hated sharing food with people. Sure, why not? The things I do for you, Petre, she thought, maintaining her pleasant expression with effort. So that's when the power wavered, Varian said, gesturing with his fork. And suddenly I'm watching these patterns dance right across my viewport, the entire navigation system going haywire. As he launched into the story, she nodded along politely, occasionally leaning forward with practiced interest. He was nice enough, she reflected. Handsome, charming, even if he talked a bit too much about himself. Under different circumstances, in another life perhaps, she might have genuinely enjoyed his company. Instead, she found her mind constantly circling back to Petre, wondering where he was, if he was watching, how much this charade must be costing him. She made sure to laugh at appropriate moments, to ask follow-up questions that kept Varian talking about himself. The less she had to manufacture enthusiasm, the better. You seem distracted, Varian observed suddenly, breaking her from her thoughts. She flushed, caught in her wandering attention. Sorry, still recovering, I think. But please go on with your story. Those atmospheric anomalies sound fascinating. She found her mind wandering again as he resumed, her eyes drifting around the restaurant. It really was nice. Couples and small groups of friends clustered around tables. They'd done a lovely job with the decor. The evening's pleasant rhythm shattered at the click of heels against the restaurant's polished floor. Rowen felt Bylelle's abrasive emotional signature before she saw her, that familiar empathic sense making her skin crawl. It amazed her how someone could be so outwardly beautiful, but have such an essential wrongness within them. Right on cue, she thought grimly, as if we summoned her with our little performance. What a charming scene. Bylelle's voice carried just the right note of warmth, though her eyes remained cold as she surveyed their table. The colony's newest couple, I presume. Varian immediately stood and bowed. Maman, you honour us with your attention. Please don't let me interrupt, Bylelle said. I simply wanted to express my appreciation for such a suitable match, a talented pilot and a promising engineer, exactly the kind of partnership the colony needs. The words were flawlessly pleasant, but it was the current of satisfaction in her empathic signature that made Rowen's empathic senses prickle. The sheer smugness of it confirmed what she and Petre had suspected. This was exactly what Bylelle wanted to see. Well then, Rowen thought with grim satisfaction, enjoy the show. You're too kind. Varian offered another deep, respectful bow, and Rowen fought to keep her expression neutral as she sensed the puppyish adoration pouring from him. She had underestimated just how deeply Bylelle's hooks were sunk into him. Bylelle's laugh was like glass cracking. Of course, though I must say it does my heart good to see young people making appropriate choices. Her gaze fixed on Rowen. Some females can be so ambitious in their aspirations. It's refreshing to see someone who understands their proper place. Young people? Rowen resisted the urge to snort in laughter. Beneath all that finery, she was fairly certain that she had a good 5 years on the Maman. The implied warning about ambitious aspirations wasn't subtle either. She means Petre, Rowen realised. She's warning me off. Varian gave a polite head bob. We live to serve, lady. Indeed. Bylelle's smile thinned slightly. Well, I won't keep you from your evening. Do enjoy yourselves. She touched Varian's arm as she passed. You are a credit to your clan, pilot. After she left, Rowen released a breath she hadn't realised she'd been holding. The encounter had left a sour taste in her mouth, despite the knowledge that their plan was apparently working. She looked at Varian, his charming smile back on his face, and her stomach lurched. Her empathic senses were crawling. She extended the slightest empathic tendril towards him, tasting the surface of his emotions, and recoiled. Pride, satisfaction, a hint of fear. He practically glowed in the maman's approval. "Oh, Varian," she thought with a pang of unexpected pity. "What has she done to you?" Suddenly, the charming decor and atmosphere that she'd just admired felt oppressive. "My apologies, Varian, but I'm not feeling well. I think I'd like to head home," she said, pushing her barely touched dessert away. "I think I might have been a bit ambitious about my stamina after the accident." "Of course," he said solicitously. If Varian was disappointed about missing their planned flight, he hid it well. "Let me walk you back." The walk home was quiet, the colony's evening sounds providing a buffer against conversation. All she could think about was getting to Petre, washing away the feeling of this deception with the truth of what they shared. When they reached her door, Varian leaned in to kiss her, and Rowen stepped back quickly, her promise to Petre ringing in her ears. "Let's get to know each other a bit first?" He laughed. "Of course, sorry. My mistake." They parted, her chest hollow with the weight of the charade. "Thank you for the pleasant night." "Thank you." Varian's smile was genuine, warm. Another female might have bought it hook, line, and sinker. Goddess, sometimes she hated being an empath. "We should do this again sometime." "Sure," she replied, and felt the lie stick in her throat. She opened her door and went inside, shutting it firmly behind her, blinking back tears that were as much frustration as sorrow. What was wrong with the maman on Verit? What drove a female to such manipulative depths that she would do this, set another female up? She waited 10 minutes, watching through the security feed until Varian had truly left, then slipped out. Her chest felt lighter with each step that took her closer to him. It worked, she thought, a grim satisfaction mixing with her distaste for the deception. Bylelle took the bait. Now she just needed to report back to her warrior, who was undoubtedly pacing his quarters like a caged predator, waiting for her return. When she reached Petre-'s door, she paused, drawing a steadying breath. Before she could press the panel, the door slid open. Petre stood in the entrance, filling the frame with tightly leashed energy. His hair was loose around his shoulders, silver in the low light. His eyes, usually so carefully controlled, blazed with a feral intensity that made her breath catch. "You're late," he said, voice low and rough. "Varian walked me home. I had to wait until he was gone." She stepped inside, the door sliding shut behind her. "Were you watching the whole time?" "Yes." The single word carried volumes. The moment the door locked, something in him broke. He moved with liquid speed, backing her against the wall, caging her with his arms, his face inches from hers. His scent surrounded her. "Do you have any idea," he breathed, "what it was like to watch his hands on you, his eyes on you, to see her standing over you both like she'd won some victory? Petre, when he leaned in to kiss you." His voice dropped to a growl that she felt more than heard. "If you hadn't stepped back, I don't know what I would have done." She reached up to touch his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "But I did step back. Because I'm yours." She held his gaze steadily. It worked, Petre. She believed it. Some of the wildness in his eyes receded. "Tell me everything." "She appeared exactly when we expected," Rowen said, still caught between his arms. "Made some pointed comments about appropriate choices and females with ambitious aspirations." Peter's lips twitched, a flicker of grim humour breaking through his possessiveness. Subtle. About as subtle as a plasma rifle. She sighed, letting her head fall back against the wall. "She's playing Varian like an instrument. You should have felt his emotions when she praised him, like a starving pet finally thrown a scrap. I'm sure she put him up to asking me out." Something dark flickered across Petre's expression. And how did he treat you? Perfectly pleasant, she admitted. If I couldn't sense what was underneath, I might have been charmed. He's good at the performance. A muscle jumped in Petra's jaw. He was watching you all night, like he was memorizing every detail. You sound jealous, she observed softly. I am. The raw honesty surprised her. I hate this game. Hate pretending you aren't mine. We've never been out on a date for dinner. I hate that he can do that. His hands finally moved from the wall to her waist, fingers splaying possessively. Rowen reached up, threading her fingers into his hair, tugging him down until their foreheads touched. I'm here now, with you. This... She pressed herself closer. This is real. That was just smoke and mirrors. His control seemed to fray further at her touch. His hands tightened on her waist, lifting her slightly so they were eye to eye. Did you think of me while you were with him? Every second, she whispered. When he talked endlessly about himself, when he ordered food for both of us without asking what I wanted, when he leaned in too close. She smiled faintly. I kept thinking, Petre would never. Something in him softened at that, though the possessive grip on her waist didn't ease. And when Bylelle appeared? I wanted to laugh, Rowen admitted. She was so transparent, so smug about her little scheme. She has no idea she's walking into our trap. His laugh was low and slightly dark. My clever mate. His eyes dropped to her lips, hunger replacing some of the fury. Mate, is it? She murmured. He met her gaze. Mine, whatever you want to call it. She chuckled and leaned towards him for a kiss, but he didn't close the distance. Instead, he studied her face as if searching for something. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious under his intense scrutiny. I need to know this isn't harming you, he said quietly. That pretending with him, enduring Bylelle's games, that it's not leaving marks I can't see. The concern in his voice touched something deep inside her. She framed his face with her hands, making sure he saw the truth in her eyes. Petre, I'm all right, really. I'm not harmed from tonight. She pressed her lips together, praying silently in her mind that she wasn't lying to him. But I don't know how long I can pretend. What I felt tonight, it made my skin crawl. There's something deeply wrong between them. She shuddered. Still, I'm stronger than you think. I can survive an uncomfortable dinner or two. Uncomfortable dinners, he repeated with a soft snort. You make it sound so mundane. Compared to nearly dying in a biodome collapse, or being blackmailed to commit espionage, it is mundane. She traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. His eyes darkened. Promise me, if you ever feel uncomfortable, you'll call. No matter when. If he appears, I want to know about it. I promise. She pressed a light kiss to him. If it helps, I hated every minute away from you. She felt the last of his restraint snap at her words. His mouth claimed hers with fierce hunger, his hands around her butt lifting her higher against the wall. She wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively, the silk of her dress bunching around her thighs. Mine, he growled against her mouth. Say it again. Yours, she gasped as his lips found the sensitive spot below her ear. Always yours. He carried her away from the wall, their bodies still pressed together, his mouth never leaving hers. I need to erase him, he murmured against her skin. Need to reclaim every place his eyes touched you. His words ignited something primal within her, a need to be claimed as thoroughly as she was claiming. Please, she whispered, and felt him shudder against her in response. He carried her toward the sofa, pushing her back onto it, trapping her under him, his mouth trailing fire down her neck, nipping sensitive places that made her fingers curl into his shoulders in silent demand. Tell me to stop, he whispered. If this isn't what you want, tell me to stop. I don't want to stop. She gasped as his hand slid up the inside of her dress. His touches grew bolder, slipping her dress off her shoulders, hands mapping the curve of her spine, the sensitive spot beneath her ribs that made her arch against him. She pulled him back down to her, pouring months of suppressed want into the kiss. He responded with a groan that vibrated through her, lifting her onto the edge of the sofa. She wrapped her legs around his waist, drawing him closer, needing to eliminate any space between them. "Make me yours," she murmured against his mouth, hands exploring the planes of his chest, pulling the zip of his own shirt open. "I want you. I need—" "I know," he rasped, pressing open-mouthed kisses along her collarbone and down into the V of her cleavage. "Rowen, I need you too. Now." He bent her backwards to lean on her elbows, allowing him to feast, using his teeth to graze her nipples, teasing them to raspberry redness. She writhed and gasped, gripping his hair to hold him close as he continued down, stripping her pants off her, revealing her to him. He delved into her center, flicking with his tongue and teasing with his teeth, drawing a scream that she muffled, biting down on her hand. He drove her up again and again until she lay gasping, exhausted. He kissed his way back up to her throat. "Still with me?" She laughed. "I think so. Just give me a minute." "Don't tell me you're tired of me already." He chuckled darkly and delivered another rasping lick at her nipple, sending shockwaves through her. "I'm just getting started." In answer, she reached her hand into his pants and gripped him firmly, slowly pumping. "Not at all." He grinned wickedly and trailed his hands over her exposed torso. "What about this?" She shivered as she felt something sharp prick her skin gently, trailing tiny lines of fire across her pebbled skin. Her pulse skyrocketed, and Petre smiled as he bent over and kissed her. "You like that, huh? Nice trick." Before she could say anything else, he trailed a single clawed finger down between them, teasing at her entrance, and she saw stars. "Answer me," he ordered. "I like it," she gasped, biting his lip. "Do it again." He laughed. "As the lady commands." He lifted her up and spun her around until her front was pressed against the back of the sofa, the rough fabric scratching her nipples. He bent her over, lifting her hips ever so slightly to position her, and she felt him nudging between her legs. "Ready?" he asked, and in response she braced herself on the back and thrust herself back onto him. They groaned in unison, and he collapsed forward onto her, pinning her beneath him. He reached around with a hand, circling her throat, turning her head to him so that he could deliver long, drugging kisses. "That was mean," he murmured against her, and with his other hand pinched her clit, eliciting another scream. She laughed as she panted, "If that's my punishment, you aren't encouraging me to be nice." She pushed back again into him, and he delivered a sharp slap to her arse cheek, then massaged tenderly to take the sting out of it. He felt her shudder and pulled back slightly. "You like this?" he accused, delighted. She smiled, and he pressed her down into the sofa again, gripping her hips firmly, setting up a punishing rhythm that had them moaning in unison. He felt her muscles twitch around him and bent forward a last time to place his teeth against the nape of her neck, biting down when he felt her squeeze against him. Only when she shouted her release did he let himself go, pouring himself into her. They lay thereafter, slumped against the sofa. His hand trembled as he smoothed her hair down her neck, pausing over her racing pulse and down the lean length of her spine as he pulled back. "You're so beautiful," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I've wanted this. Wanted you. For so long." Rowen's entire body felt electrified, every nerve ending alive to his touch. She arched into him as his lips found that sensitive spot below her ear. "How long?" she asked. "Since that first day," he murmured against her skin. "When you first saw Casti, you were brilliant and fierce and like a ray of sunlight." She huffed in indignation. "I was not." He silenced her with another kiss, this one deep and consuming, until she melted against him. "You were pure joy and fun," he said when they parted. but watching you fight for what you believed in. That's when I knew I was in trouble. It took me a while to admit it to myself, and then it terrified me. What she might do to you. The confession hit her like a physical blow, as did the shudder she felt run through him. She disentangled herself, turned in his arms, and peppered his face with kisses until he laughed in delight. "I'm here, love. I'm safe in your arms. Stay here with me, just for tonight. She can't come between us, not here." Breaking point. Petre sat in his office, the early morning light starting to filter in. Rowen had left him before dawn, sneaking back to her own room so no one would see her. In his mind, he kept replaying the images of her flushed and sated in his bed, curling around him as she slept. Fear clutched at his heart. He'd nearly lost her before he had a chance to tell her how much she meant. Closing his eyes, he allowed himself to remember her in the medbay, pale against the clinical sheets, her vibrant spirit dimmed by pain. Even wounded, she still had more courage than he could summon. He had made a vow to himself that he would never risk losing her again. Petre was so lost in his thoughts he didn't realize there was anyone else there until she spoke. "My precious Petre." Bylelle's voice dripped false concern, sweet as poisoned honey. "Such drama at the construction site. I had to see for myself that you were unharmed." Anger sparked in his chest, but he kept it carefully contained. "I'm fine, Maman. Thank you for your concern. The structural integrity systems responded as designed." "And your little engineer?" She moved closer, her scent making his nostrils flare with instinctive aversion. "I heard she had quite the fall." "Specialist May will recover," he said, his voice professionally neutral. "Her intervention saved the entire project." "I saw the security footage. Such a tragedy. She was lucky you were there. The way you moved." She paced the office slowly, occasionally stopping to pick up a datapad to inspect it. "I've never seen anything quite like it. Such raw desperation, such passion." Fear slithered through him. He tried to deny it. "The situation." She cut him off with a mocking laugh. "No, my dear. That wasn't duty. That was far more primal." She moved around to stand next to him behind the desk. "Warriors," she mused, "are trained to protect those they care for. They're also trained to lie effectively, but not to me." Her hand shot out to grip his jaw, sharp fingernails digging into his skin. "You care for her." He could smell her anger as she leaned closer, her pupils dilating with jealous rage. He kept his voice steady despite the pain. "She's a valued member of my team." "Liar!" The word exploded from her. "I see how you look at her, how you hover around her workstation, like some lovesick puppy instead of a proper Verit male." Her nails dug deeper, leaving small crescents of pain. "Why, Petre? Why submit to her and not me?" All at once he realized denial was pointless. Bylelle knew, had perhaps always known, his feelings for Rowen. Perhaps a different approach might work. The ghost of a bitter smile touched his lips. "What does it matter how I feel? She doesn't want me." "What?" Bylelle's grip loosened slightly, confusion flickering across her perfect features. "You saw her last night, didn't you?" He let the pain he'd been hiding colour his voice. "She's with Varian, dining, laughing, choosing someone else." He looked away, feigning defeat. "It doesn't matter what I feel if she doesn't feel the same." Something shifted in Bylelle's expression, triumph mingled with cruel satisfaction. "Poor Petre," she cooed, stroking his face with false tenderness. "Rejected for someone so inferior." "It's her choice," he said quietly. "I respect that." "Is it her choice, though?" Her smile turned razor-sharp. "Did you know I suggested Varian approach her?" The words hit like a physical blow, pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. "You arranged it." "Of course I did." She looked immensely pleased with herself. "Did you think Varian would dare pursue her on his own? He knows exactly where his loyalties lie. Her hands slid down his chest possessively. Unlike some. He caught her wrists, removing her hands from his body. Don't. No? She leaned closer, her breath hot against his face. Have you lost your spirit entirely? The female you want is out with another male, and you sit here like a neutered pet. Don't you want revenge? Rage unfurled in his chest, dark and primitive. Get out! His voice emerged stripped of civilized veneer. This game is finished! Her smile widened. Oh, Petre, the game is just beginning. She traced a finger down his chest, dragging open the catches on his shirt one by one. You will give me what I want, or I will take everything you love. Your brother first, I think, then your precious mentor, and finally your little engineer, though I might let you watch that one. The threat shattered the last of his internal leashes. He grabbed her wrists, using her momentum to spin her, pinning her against his desk. Is this what you want? He snarled, letting her feel his full strength he usually kept contained. To own me? To break me? Yes, she breathed, eyes bright with hunger. She surged toward him, gripping his hair. I can have your little engineer killed tonight, right now. You may have forgotten who you are, but your brothers have not. His heart dropped. No. Convince me then, she purred, pressing her lips to his, biting down on his lower lip. Give me a reason not to. Show me how you submit. He kissed her, pouring his rage and fury into it. It was a thing of teeth and hatred. She moaned and clawed at him, pawing at his clothes. She reached for his waistband, undoing it, panting in her desire. She palmed him, squeezing and pumping. He let it go on for a few seconds, then abruptly stood back, making her stumble. He methodically, dispassionately, fastened his pants and straightened himself. By the time she realized what was happening, he had moved to the other side of the room. She stood herself up, confusion warring with fury as she straightened her skirts. She froze when she saw his stony expression. For a moment she looked shaken, and it occurred to him how young she was, barely 21 and brought up in the viciousness of the Maman convocation. But then, her face screwed up in rage. But you... No. His voice was clipped. Never with you. Her face blanched as if she'd been struck. For a split second he thought she might try to kill him. Then, before his eyes, her expression went blank, wiped away like it had never existed. That chilled him more than anything else she'd done so far. That was a mistake, she said, her voice unnaturally calm. He opened his mouth to retort, but she cut him off. The scanners are providing excellent data, by the way, though one has stopped transmitting. I assume it was discovered. The abrupt shift made his head spin. I don't know. No matter. She flicked the prospect of his discovery and arrest away casually. You will plant more? He scrambled, trying to keep up with her. That's not a good idea. If they've found one, they'll be looking for more. She looked straight through him, her face expressionless. You will plant more. You have your orders. In a flash, understanding struck him. You want them to be discovered. Plant them when Broken gives you the tour. She smiled, all teeth. He makes such a convenient scapegoat, don't you think? Ice spread through his veins. He'll be arrested, deported at best. Unless someone speaks for him. She folded her hands primly. Someone with influence. Someone who could protect him, if properly motivated. The scope of her plan hit him like a physical blow. Create a crisis, make him complicit in her schemes until he had no choice but to submit. You would destroy everything, he said, appalled, just to own me. She sneered. Don't be so arrogant. We want the data as well. She reached into the pocket of her voluminous skirt and pulled out a handful of the little scanners, letting them drop to the floor. Plant these tomorrow, on your tour with Broken. If we don't get the information we need in 3 days, we'll start carving pieces from your father. She met his gaze with cold certainty. I already own you. You were just slow at learning the lesson." Only after she left did he allow his legs to give out, sinking into his chair as the full weight of her cruelty settled over him. The taste of bile rose in his throat, and he didn't quite manage to get the bin over in time. He sat in his office for nearly an hour, trapped in his own mind as he weighed his options again and again. But with full daylight came a strange clarity. The moment he made the decision, really made it, not just considered it, something shifted inside him. By the time he arrived at Lucan's for breakfast, the frantic desperation that had plagued him for weeks had crystallized into something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Resolve. Bylelle thought she owned him, but she had miscalculated. In trying to break him completely, she had inadvertently stripped away his last reason to hold back. Petre sat at Lucan's breakfast table, methodically spreading jam across his toast with precise, controlled movements. Lucan watched his brother with concern, noting the shadows under his eyes and the newfound stillness in his demeanor. Gone was the constrained fury of the past few weeks. In its place, a cold resolve had taken root. "You look different this morning," Lucan observed, setting his coffee down. "Something's changed." "I told Rowen everything." The words fell into the quiet like stones into still water. Lucan's eyebrows rose. "Everything?" "Father, Bylelle's threats, all of it." Peter took a measured bite of his toast, chewing methodically. "She deserved to know the danger she's in." "And how did she take it?" A ghost of a smile touched Petre's lips. "Better than I deserved. She's stronger than I gave her credit for." His expression hardened. "Bylelle knows that I care about her. She thinks Rowen doesn't want me back, but I don't know how much I can keep up the ruse." He laughed brittlely. Lucan exhaled slowly. "That's going to complicate things. It clarifies them." Petre's voice carried quiet certainty. "Now I know exactly where we stand." "And where is that exactly?" "We have 3 days before they kill Father." Petre's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his knife. "Bylelle wants me to plant more scanners during Broken's tour today, to let him take the fall when they're discovered." "Broken?" Lucan's voice emerged rough. "She wants you to betray Broken. The male who was more father to us than our own." Something dangerous flickered behind Petre's eyes. "Who protected us, mentored us, gave us a future beyond being warrior slaves." "What are you going to do?" Petre set down his knife with deliberate precision. "I'm going on the tour. I'm taking the scanners with me and I'm going to plant them." "Petre, I'll do what I have to do to keep Father alive, to keep Rowen safe." His gaze met his brother's, unwavering. "We'll deal with the fallout when it happens." "You have a plan." It wasn't a question. I have no plan, just hope. Petre met his gaze. "This can't continue, this manipulation. They're going too far, pushing us to the edge. Eventually, it'll crack. Whether it's the rebels or something else, I don't know. Right now, I can't worry about that. I need to keep the people I love alive." "You're putting a lot of faith in possibilities," Lucan cautioned. "How can I help?" "Keep searching for Father. Keep trying to get to the rebels. And watch over Rowen when I can't." Petre's expression softened momentarily. "She insists on helping, but I don't want her anywhere near Bylelle." He grimaced. "She's agreed to go on a couple of dates with Verit and to throw Bylelle off the scent, but I don't know how long she can maintain the charade." Lucan gaped for a moment before swallowing. "Consider it done." Lucan reached across the table, gripping his brother's forearm in the warrior's clasp. "Just don't do anything reckless." Petre's smile held a predatory edge. "Nothing reckless, just necessary." He stood, his movements fluid and controlled. "I need to get ready. Broken's waiting." As Petre headed for the door, Lucan called after him. "I'm with you, brother. Whatever comes. Petre paused, looking back with quiet intensity. I know. Then more softly, that's what will get us through this. The scanner felt cold against Petre's palm as he followed Broken through Casti's engineering sections. There was no more anxiety, only quiet resolve. He had made his choice. Everyone would live, and he would deal with the consequences later. The neural pathways extend through the entire structure, Broken was saying, in his usual gruff manner. See how the connections mirror organic synaptic patterns. Memories surfaced, Broken standing between him and the combat masters, fighting for his right to study engineering. Broken teaching him to repair an environmental system. Broken believing in him when his own clan saw nothing but another blade to be sharpened. It's an efficient design, Petre replied, his voice steady as his eyes catalogued each junction, each access point, looking for places to hide the scanners. Broken paused at an interface panel, pointing out integration architecture. Petre leaned in to examine the panel. As Broken turned to activate a diagnostic display, Petre's hand moved. The first scanner slid into place beneath the panel, its adaptive surface bonding instantly with it. A tiny green light pulsed once, then faded to camouflage mode. 1 down, 4 to go. The integration of biological and mechanical systems is impossible to replicate with our technology, Broken continued, leading him deeper into the engineering sector. They entered a chamber filled with pulsing, organic-looking tubes that reminded Petre of a vascular system, the perfect location for the second scanner. As Broken walked ahead, gesturing expansively, Petre kneeled to adjust his boot. The second device attached to the underside of a diagnostic terminal, nestled between power conduits where it would be virtually invisible. 2. With each placement, a strange numbness spread through him. Not panic or desperation anymore, just the calm detachment of someone doing what had to be done. You're unusually quiet today, Broken observed as they entered the propulsion sector. Something on your mind? Just absorbing it all, Petre replied, the lie coming smoothly now. It's a lot to process. Broken's expression softened. Take your time. It took me weeks to understand half of what I'm showing you. While Broken examined a display panel, Petre seized the opportunity to place the third scanner on the underside of a structural support beam. 3. They continued to the data processing center, where crystalline structures resembled a forest of transparent trees. This is the core of Casti, Broken explained. The computing power here exceeds everything in the Alliance combined. Incredible, Petre murmured, and he meant it. Even as he betrayed these secrets, he couldn't help appreciating the technological marvel. As they rounded a particularly large crystal cluster, he pretended to stumble, catching himself against a support column, the fourth scanner attached to its surface. 4. The final scanner weighed heavy in his pocket as they approached what Broken called the memory core, a spherical chamber where the walls themselves seemed to pulse with stored information. This is as far as we can go without Odran or Zira, Broken explained. The deeper sections require a bonded navigator's authorization. Perfect. The entrance to the restricted area would be an ideal location for the final scanner. As Broken turned to lead them back, Petre paused. Actually, I had a question about this junction, he said, pointing to a complex pattern of connections near the security barrier. As Broken approached to explain, Petre's fingers deftly placed the last scanner at the threshold of the restricted section. 5. Done. 5 scanners strategically placed throughout Casti's most sensitive areas, each transmitting valuable data directly to the mammal. His father would live. Lucan would be safe. And Rowen would understand, even as she hated what he'd had to do. As they continued their tour, Petre walked with a strange sense of completion. Not triumphant, certainly not proud, but at least resolved. The weight of his actions settled around his shoulders like a heavy coat. He would regret this betrayal for the rest of his life, but regret was preferable to losing everyone he loved. Broken paused suddenly, his expression thoughtful. You seem different today. Petre met his mentor's gaze. I've had some time to think. About? He chose his words carefully. About priorities. About what matters most. Broken studied him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. And what matters most, Petre? Family, he answered simply. Keeping safe those I care about. A shadow of concern crossed Broken's face. At what cost? Petre's smile was thin but genuine. That's the question, isn't it? When this was over, when his father and Lucan and Rowen were secure, he would face the consequences of his actions. Not with the desperate panic he'd felt before, but with the quiet acceptance of someone who had made a difficult choice with open eyes. His HUD pinged, a message from Rowen. I need you in the courtyard. Varian has crashed my lunch hour. I'm getting weird vibes from him. Can you come now?